Next on Currents News, the Holy Father makes a vow to end sexual abuse in the Catholic Church. Coronavirus infections are creeping up in New York City. Will schools be forced to close down again? The Affordable Care Act may have survived another challenge in the Supreme Court. Plus, it's Veterans Day, and we have the story of a Catholic priest who is serving God and country. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Emily Druby in for Christine Persichetti. Pope Francis is vowing to end sexual abuse in the church. This comes a day after a detailed report on ex-Cardinal Theodore McCarrick was released. Currents News' Jessica Easthope has more on what the Holy Father said today.
The Holy Father is leading the charge in seeking to erase former Cardinal Theodore McCarrick's mark on the Catholic Church.
I can't see how anyone in the United States today would cover up something like that.
After a report on the decades of misconduct at the hands of McCarrick was released by the Vatican Tuesday, Pope Francis is emphasizing the Church's commitment to stamping out abuse.
Ieri è stato pubblicato il rapporto sul doloroso caso dell'ex cardinale Theodore McCarrick. Rinnovo la mia vicinanza alle vittime di ogni abuso e l'impegno della Chiesa per sradicare questo male.
Pope Francis has done more than any of his predecessors to stand with victims and eliminate abuse in the Catholic Church. In addition to ordering the report on evidence of McCarrick's abuse and laicizing the now 90-year-old former cardinal, to date, Pope Francis has established the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors, holding a meeting with the world's bishops following the allegations against McCarrick, created a task force to help religious entities revise guidelines to further protect minors from abuse, waived the obligation of secrecy for those who have been abused by a priest or church leader, and issued a document clarifying procedures on how to hold bishops and religious leaders accountable. Though he's made many big strides, Pope Francis says we cannot move forward without confident prayer.
Ci sono dei momenti bui nella nostra vita e lì la fede sembra una illusione. Ma praticare la preghiera significa anche accettare questa fatica.
McCarrick has not been arrested or charged with any crimes. He's reported to be living in an undisclosed community of priests who have been removed from ministry. Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
Now to a different crisis, the coronavirus spiking in New York City. The governor ordering bars and restaurants to start closing at 10 this Friday. And if your child just got back in the classroom, they could be coming back home any day now. That's according to the mayor. He's saying the city is on the brink of a second wave and there's only one more chance to get cases under control before New York goes back into lockdown. And that would mean closing schools.
We still can fight back this second wave. Hold on, keep life in the city going the way it is now and get to the point where the vaccine is here. That's still possible. But it is getting tighter and tighter, and we need to fight back with everything we got. And that means everybody is responsible.
When the percentage of New Yorkers testing positive reaches 3%, that's when restrictions could be imposed and students would switch over to remote learning. Currently, the positivity rate is averaging 2.52%. So where exactly is someone likely to get the coronavirus? You might not like the results of a new study. Restaurants, gyms, hotels, and houses of worship are among the 10% of locations that appear to account for 80% of infections. That's according to researchers at Northwestern and Stanford. But since churches first reopened in the Diocese of Brooklyn at the beginning of the summer, there hasn't been a COVID case traced back to any parish. The Diocese of Brooklyn recently filed a lawsuit on the basis of religious freedom against the state of New York for enforcing restrictions. When the lawsuit was first filed, Bishop DiMarzio said the state has completely disregarded the fact that our safety protocols have worked, and it is an insult to once again penalize all those who have made the safe return to church work. Many Diocese of Brooklyn churches are currently in orange zones, meaning regardless of how big they are, they cannot have more than 25 people at Mass. President Donald Trump spent today honoring those who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country, attending a Veterans Day ceremony at Arlington National Cemetery. This is the president's first public appearance since the media projected the election for Joe Biden. The commander-in-chief and first lady laying a wreath at the cemetery's tomb of the unknown soldier. Stay with us later in this newscast. We have a special Veterans Day story, an Army chaplain dedicated to God and country. Father Andrew De Silva isn't overseas, but on the front lines right here at home, battling the invisible coronavirus. That's still ahead on Currents News. It looks like the Affordable Care Act may survive another challenge in the Supreme Court. It's the third time since 2012 that the legality of Obamacare has gone before the High Court. John Lawrence reports.
The U.S. Supreme Court hearing arguments over the Affordable Care Act.
God save the United States and this honorable court.
Trump administration lawyers and GOP state attorneys general say a 2017 congressional amendment that eliminates the penalty for failing to get insurance invalidates the law altogether. Lawyers supporting the ACA say Obamacare can't survive without that mandate. Chief Justice John Roberts appears to agree with the latter.
I think it's hard for you to argue that Congress intended the entire act to fall if the mandate were struck down when the same Congress that lowered the penalty to zero did not even try to repeal the rest of the act.
Justice Brett Kavanaugh, a Trump appointee, says Obamacare could survive if the amendment were removed.
This is a very straightforward case for severability under our precedents, meaning that we would excise the mandate and leave the rest of the act in place.
Legal analysts say comments like these make it appear that Obamacare is not in critical condition.
It's a pretty good sign there are at least 5 votes, including Kavanaugh, the Chief Justice, the 3 progressives, to leave the rest of the ACA intact. That's going to be a big sigh of relief for millions of Americans.
I'm John Lawrence reporting.
The Catholic Health Association urged the court to uphold the current law. The organization, which includes more than 2,200 hospitals and nursing homes, says striking down the law would be devastating to millions of Americans, including some of the most vulnerable during a pandemic. The Catholic Church has objected to the law's contraceptive mandate that requires health plans to provide contraception coverage. The Trump campaign continues its legal challenges contesting the outcome of the election. A lawsuit was filed today in Michigan alleging that Republicans were blocked from observing vote counting. The campaign has filed a number of lawsuits claiming election irregularities in 6 states where projected winner Joe Biden leads in the vote count. President Trump has refused to concede, saying his campaign will prosecute its case in court to ensure election laws are upheld. Brian Brown, St. John's political science professor, joins us now to talk more about President Trump's chances of staying in the White House. Now, Brian, the president is definitely right about one thing. The election is not over when the media calls the race. It's not over until each state formally certifies its vote, and that's going to take place over the coming weeks. Can you explain the process to us?
Sure. And I think first, most networks have been using the term projected winner or president-elect, and that's really where we are. But in a normal process, states certify election results, the Electoral College casts electoral votes, and then Congress counts the votes. Now, that's the normal procedure. Each state has different deadlines and procedures on how they do this, and some of those are coming up very quickly. So we really need to resolve this matter. We need to resolve it in a timely and fair fashion so that the Electoral College can do their job come mid-December.
So does that mean that news networks and papers called the election too early? And is this year really any different than years past?
Well, this year is a little bit different in the sense we have a very close race and a lot of uncertainty in some of the counts in particular states. But there's no discrepancy when it comes to the popular vote, where Joe Biden is up, I think, 6 million votes. This is a little different from 20 years ago with Bush v. Gore, where the whole election outcome was hinging on Florida. And as we know, that went all the way to the Supreme Court. We're not there yet.
So there's also a precedent to turn the courts in recounts. We saw that happen in 2000 in Florida with the election battle between George Bush and Al Gore. The two sides went all the way to the Supreme Court. Then the High Court rejected the recount and Bush won the election. What's the likelihood we see echoes of that?
Well, I don't think we've seen any evidence yet. And I think it's really incumbent upon President Trump and the Trump campaign to produce whatever evidence it is that they're saying, whatever allegations of fraud that they allege has taken place. Thus far, we haven't seen it. There's been some anecdotal stories, but it's really time to kind of, put up the evidence at this point. Now, Florida 20 years ago was a little bit different in the sense that, again, the whole election came down to a couple counties. We're not there.
We're hearing a lot of people telling the president to stop. Biden even saying that his efforts are, quote, embarrassing. Let's listen.
I just think it's an embarrassment, quite frankly. I think it will not help the president's legacy.
So, Brian, what's your opinion? Do you think any other candidate would fight given the circumstances?
Well, President Trump, as you know, is kind of a chaos candidate, and he almost telegraphed this in many ways on the campaign trail.
Brian Browne, political science professor at St. John's University. It's always great to have you with us.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
There's a lot more news headed your way. A Catholic priest from Staten Island who serves as a Navy chaplain during the Vietnam War is being remembered in a very special way on this Veterans Day. Plus, serving God and country, how a priest from New Jersey who is also an Army Reserve captain is putting his life on the line during the pandemic. And later, one vet's nightly tribute to those who made the ultimate sacrifice.
Now you can help us put your faith in the news. The next time you capture a newsworthy event, send us your pictures or video. It's easy. Go to netny.tv/send us, and you may see your submission on Currents News.
I never met a priest like him. And I never will.
It was at that night that he decided that he consider joining the military.
He saw his place on that battlefield, period.
It's not unusual for people like these men to call priest Padre, but for them, there was only one grunt Padre, and that's Father Vincent Capodanno, a Navy chaplain who once stood on the front lines in the Vietnam War. Now he's in line for sainthood. The Staten Island-born priest is being remembered in a big way this Veterans Day. Net TV is airing an award-winning documentary on his life right after Currents News. But first, let's talk to one of the guys who probably knows the most about Grunt Padre, Tim Moriarty, the executive director of that documentary, The Field Afar. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Now, Father Vincent Capodanno was a young priest who walked New York streets. So how did he end up on the battlefield in Vietnam on the other side of the world?
Yes, well, Father Capodanno, he was from Staten Island, and he had a very large Italian-American family. He joined Maryknoll, studied with them, and then ended up in Taiwan as a missionary priest. And then while working in Hong Kong, teaching English, he felt called to help as a military chaplain for the Marine Corps. So he entered as a Navy chaplain, and then they sent him off to Vietnam. So yeah, he's a remarkable man who I think demonstrates what a Catholic priest can do in very, very challenging circumstances, and somebody that it's very been nourishing to me in my own spiritual life as I've gotten to know him.
And speaking of special, the guys on the battlefield had a special name for him, Grunt Padre. You met and interviewed a lot of them. How did they come up with that nickname, and what do they remember most about him?
Yeah, so for the Marines, infantrymen, they were known as grunts. And Father Capodanno was somebody who was with them through thick and thin. He would go with them on their operations, these very dangerous combat operations. So they gave him the name the Grunt Padre because they really saw him as one of them who really walked with them.
Really quick for me, a personal question for you, Tim. Why did you want to tell this story?
When I met his family on Staten Island and then met a few soldiers that knew him, I just felt like this is something that the world, Americans, Catholics, New Yorkers, need to know more about. That this is somebody who we can all be very proud of, especially in today's climate with what's going on in the church, what's going on in our world. He's somebody who can give us a lot of hope.
Tim Moriarty, Executive Director of The Field Afar, The Life of Father Vincent Capodanno. Thank you so much for being with us, and I can't wait to watch.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
And you can watch The Field Afar tonight right after this at 7:30 p.m. on Net TV. It's a beautiful way to end this Veterans Day. Another vet, Father Andrew De Silva, works to meet the spiritual needs of some of our country's greatest heroes, the Army Reserves. During this pandemic, as many people are locked away safely in their homes, they are fighting on the front lines. Father Andrew De Silva lives between two worlds, serving God and his parishioners as the parochial vicar of St. Agnes Church in Clark, New Jersey, and serving his country as a captain in the U.S. Army Reserves.
I benefit tremendously from my contact with soldiers.
A ministry made especially difficult this year. As the head chaplain for the 8th Medical Brigade on Staten Island, he was there as the reserves navigated their role in fighting the pandemic.
Usually, medical brigade kind of supports, the forward, components, whereas all of a sudden, it was like medical brigade's going to lead the way.
Father De Silva got his first taste of Army life while in college at Virginia Military Institute. As the descendant of a long line of American heroes, the military was in his blood.
My father, he was in Vietnam, Army medic. My grandfather was in 3 wars.
Out of college and working in the wine industry, Father De Silva says he was living for 3 purposes: marriage, money, and the freedom to travel. Then he came across the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal.
These monks were way happier and more fulfilled than I was, and they had the 3 opposite values.
That's where his new path began. Joining the Brothers of St. John, he was sent to Seton Hall University, where he worked with ROTC students, which led him to the reserves. After 8 years as a religious brother, he felt the calling to become a priest and was ordained in 2019. Now he's on his 2nd year as a priest and his 7th with the chaplain corps. Juggling both of his callings, ministering to his parishioners, while always keeping a packed-to-go Army chaplain bag nearby.
A lot of the soldiers, citizen soldiers, are working 2 jobs. They don't have the same structure, they've got a lot of stress, a lot of difficulties, and so there really is a tremendous need for people to kind of be there for them, to support them, to walk with them.
This past year, as hospitals were overflowing and overwhelmed with COVID patients, being a chaplain meant supporting soldiers who are learning to set up field hospitals. Men and women fearlessly facing the coronavirus, a terrifying and deadly opponent, to protect their fellow Americans. Father De Silva's help and guidance was greatly needed.
One big thing was just the uncertainty.
Now he's urging fellow clergy to follow on his path.
I would recommend that all of us be ready to wear a hat that we didn't expect to wear. I think that's something that 2020 has taught us.
Father De Silva reports for duty twice a month, all while still ministering to his home parish daily. In South Carolina, dozens are taking part in a Veterans Victory Walk honoring those who served while raising awareness for vets suffering with PTSD. They're walking 100 miles down the coast. Veterans and active members from all branches of the military started the journey in Myrtle Beach on Tuesday and are making their way towards the state capital, Charleston. The journey has some on foot, others on wheels, and many putting on a brave face.
Every single day we try to be strong, but just know that veterans are struggling every single day, and they hide it very well. They have a face on, it's a mask, and sometimes they look happy, but inside they're struggling.
The group will end their 35-hour journey at Patriots Point in Charleston. Still to come on Current News. The story behind this moving tribute to our nation's veterans that began on Memorial Day and has taken place every night since. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. One veteran is connecting to his fellow soldiers and his fellow man during this pandemic, using a song Americans know all too well. the classic taps. They've been ringing out each night in a small town in Illinois. Will Jones has the story.
I've done it every day, every sunset since Memorial Day evening.
He's played in all kinds of weather. Nothing has stopped him. Hasn't missed a night.
A moving tribute each night at Crystal Lake to honor our nation's veterans.
He was afraid the neighbors would be offended and make too much noise.
It turns out Jim Heisler's nightly gesture in his yard was just what his neighbors needed. Richard Kerman and his wife Beverly have walked over almost every single day.
I'm a veteran. Taps has always been one of my favorite things. It's something that's been very important in my life, and it makes me feel good.
It just makes the day better, and especially with COVID and the election, we always knew we'd have this moment of peace for the day.
Yeah, I've had people call me, write me notes and letters from that I don't even know.
His wife, Rebecca Heisler, is always by his side, counting down the time until sunset.
In this turbulent times that we have, it's really nice to be able to spread some positivity and some good feelings. I can't keep from being choked up because typically every night I am choked up while he's playing. It's such a small thing, but it makes such a statement.
It's not just so many notes, it has a meaning.
We will miss it. So maybe he'll do it again next year.
Such a beautiful story. That was Will Jones reporting. Tonight at sunset will be the last time Jim Heisler plays taps, this one dedicated to all those who served our country. But tonight we also thank him for his music and for his own service. And that is Currents News. I'm Emily Drewby. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. And remember, you can watch The Field Afar right now, a documentary on the life of Father Vincent Capodanno, a chaplain who sacrificed it all for God and country.
I never met a priest like him, and I never will.
It was at that night that he decided that he consider joining the military.
He saw his place on that battlefield, period.
It's not unusual for Marines to call Catholic priests padre, but the Grunt Padre, there's only one.
He was not this bubbly personality kind of guy, at least not around me when I saw him. I mean, he was pretty direct.
Any little bit of joy or happiness that we have here is but a taste of the eternal happiness we're going to have in heaven. But in order to achieve that eternal life in heaven, we must go through the process that we have come to call death.
This is going to be long and it's going to be hard. They basically told us, you know, a lot of you not coming back.
He's in. And if it goes bad, it'll go bad. He accepted that.
These were guys who were in a hellish spot, and he was there willing to go down into hell with them. And that counts.